Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll try to find out why this winter's El Nino has become an El Busto. And Arizona Senate President Andy Biggs will join us in studio. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals today upheld the EPA's disapproval of Arizona's regional haze plan involving a northern Arizona coal-fired power plant. The court ruled that the EPA's actions complied with the Clean Air Act and air pollution standards. The court also ruled that the EPA's plan to require the plant to install updated pollution controls also complies with the Clean Air Act. And Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery today said that his employees will no longer use iPhones. That's because Apple is refusing to help the FBI unlock a phone used by one of the shooters involved in the San Bernardino terrorist attacks. Montgomery said, quote, Apple's refusal to cooperate with a legitimate law enforcement investigation to unlock a phone used by terrorists puts Apple on the side of terrorists instead of on the side of public safety. It was billed a supermassive El Nino weather pattern, an indication that rainfall this winter would be quite a bit above normal. So what happened? Where in the world is El Nino? Here to help with the investigation of the missing weather pattern is ASU climatologist, public enemy number one, Randy Servin. Good to have you back here.
Yeah, I was almost going to wear a plastic paper bag over my head.
I was going to say, you got to be careful. What happened to El Nino?
Well, El Nino is actually still going on. There are certain weather things that are happening around the world that are linked to El Nino. We had one of the worst cyclones hit Fiji just this last week. That was probably in part due to El Nino. It just so happens that we haven't been getting the nice effects that other places have been.
Why have we not been getting those effects?
Well, the storm track, normally during an El Nino, the storm track goes through California and then into Arizona. This year, it was a little further north, so the storm track's been going into northern California and into Utah, and it's been missing us. So like if we look at the last 30 days of rainfall, what we're going to find is that we are dry.
I think we have a map of the last 30 days of rainfall, and I believe the map is relatively self-explanatory. The dark stuff means, good luck, fella.
Exactly, and you can see Mexico, Texas, New Mexico and Arizona are just some of the driest places in the last 30 days.
Now, the areas to the north that got precipitation, does that mean snow on the high country, or is this still a warm weather pattern?
Well, they've gotten some snow, but not nearly as much as they had hoped for. But the problem is that the storm tracks are right now way far north, so that it's been places like Oregon and Washington that have been getting more of the rain.
Well, that just sounds like normal. That's like La Nina, isn't it? That's just normal.
That's exactly
all
the
right.
case.
So this is the last 30 days. No great shakes there. Now, prognostication, the next, 3 months, we got a map for that as well?
Well, the Climate Prediction Center, that's the group that makes these long-term forecasts, is actually very hopeful that our spring is actually going to be pretty darn wet, that this ridge that's been over top of us, that's been forcing all the storms north, is going to break down within the next couple of weeks, we hope. And when it does, it should allow a lot more moisture and then consequently storms to develop over Arizona.
And that deeper green means more rain. The deeper the green, the more the rain.
Deeper green, more likely that we're going to have rain.
Right, likelihood. Okay, so the recent above average temperatures, which is making all this worse, is that El Nino related?
In the Pacific, it is. El Nino is a Pacific situation, and when we have really hot waters in the Pacific Ocean, that's what we call El Nino, and it happens about once every 5 to 7 years.
But what about us? I mean, we've been here in Arizona, we've been having above average temperatures. Again, is that El Nino related?
No, the hot temperatures that we've had have been the result of this really big high pressure system, the thing that's kept us dry. If you don't have storms coming through, you're not going to have any cloud cover and you're going to get all of that sunshine. So if you have a ridge over top of you, you're going to be hot.
So is it typical for El Ninos to not be typical?
Well, I think that this one is definitely going to go in the record books as a non-traditional type of El Nino. But that's one of the things. We're constantly learning about these kind of situations. The weather patterns that we have are some of the most complex things that we can study. We mapped the human genome. We haven't mapped all of weather yet.
Right. So, okay. So it looks like we could legitimately have a gully washer every day in March and April, correct?
Well, what they are forecasting is that we're going to have above normal precipitation.
Right.
But remember that as we go into the springtime, our normal precipitation starts to go down as well. So we're going to have rains, but they're not necessarily going to be gully washers. They're going to be big, hopefully soaking type of rain.
So it's a possibility, obviously the forecast map we saw that, but still no, the possibility is still there for April, even into May. Rainfall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned El Nino. It's a warming of the water off the coast. I think most people are by now familiar with that. So the warming of the water means the water warms, temperatures and weather accommodates. Global warming. Water around the world is warming, rising and warming. Is that affecting the warming waters of El Nino and thus affecting the impact of El Nino on weather? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, one of the things about warming waters are that warming waters expand. So as you have warming waters, you're going to have rising sea levels. And that's been one of the things that a recent study just came out that showed that sea levels are rising at an increasing rate than anything that we've seen in the last 3,000 years. Again, the problem is that there are so many complex things that are going on in our system. To try to say all of this is a result of one particular thing is pretty difficult. But the evidence is starting to mount up that more and more of our changes are the result of things that we are doing to our climate system.
Well, because the reason I ask is, I mean, if the warming water off of Peru or Chile or whatever it is over there, if that water is so much warmer than the other water, but now the other water is warm as well, El Nino is not so warm anymore.
Right. And if you remember, there was something that we were talking about in the fall called the blob. It was a massive hot water that was off of San Diego.
Yes.
That was something that we still don't totally understand. But it does tell us that there are a lot of strange things that are going on in our ocean systems that are not related to El Nino that we still have to figure out what's going on.
All right. Is what's going on now any impact at all on our monsoon?
No. The stuff here, the research suggests the stuff that's going on right now really doesn't have a big impact on what our monsoon is going to be like.
The stuff that's going on right now, does it mean we're set for a La Nina next winter?
The latest advisories that the National Weather Service are putting out do suggest that the models that they run are suggesting that El Nino is weakening. It will be gone probably by the summertime, and we'll get more into a La Nina pattern by next fall and into winter.
If we get into a La Nina pattern next fall and winter, if this is El Nino, is La Nina going to be just like no rain forever?
Well, when you toss the dice, they normally are going to come up when it's a La Nina situation is dry. But
Yes.
the same thing holds true. Under El Nino, when you toss the dice, normally you're going to get wet. We just happen to have a toss of the dice where it came out dry.
Yeah, okay. So bottom line is El Nino is still there. We still have it. We could still get a whole bunch of rain here. But so far, it's been a disappointment, hasn't it? It's been disappointing.
Oh, it has been big time. The last time I was here, we were so excited about those January rains that we had. And I was expecting that February was going to be something similar. And so, yes, it's really been disappointing for me.
All right. Good to have you here. And we'll try to get you back one more time before El Nino is adios. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Get the inside scoop on what's happening at Arizona PBS. Become an insider. You'll receive weekly updates on the most anticipated upcoming programs and events. Get the insider delivered to your email inbox. Visit azpbs.org to sign up today.
The Arizona Senate this week voted to phase in a controversial voucher-like system to all state public students by the 2020 school year. Here to talk about the bill and other activity at the legislature is Arizona Senate President Andy Biggs, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ted.
Thank you for
having me.
joining us. These, I know you don't like to call them vouchers. Technically, they're not vouchers, but they're voucher-like. We can, I think, maybe agree to that. But anyway, what are we talking? How is this good for Arizona? The idea that tax dollars will be going to citizens to pay for private school tuition.
Well, one thing that you have to realize is that I believe in school choice. I believe parents should choose where their kids go to school. But what ESAs do is they allow particularly low-income children, and this bill expands it significantly, it allows them to choose what school to go to, which they otherwise might not be able to attend. Now, you're concerned about tax dollars, but here's the rub. You actually save almost $2,000 per student who takes an ESA, because if they were to stay in their current traditional public school, they would probably be funded about $2,000 higher than the ESA amount that they'll be getting. And actually, in many cases, you save more than that.
And it's interesting, in some cases, I've seen reports where you save much less than that, like it would be only a few $100s and such. So I think the numbers are obviously out there. But you mentioned that the idea of having kids, especially low-income kids, Arizona Republic did a report, and it shows that these ESAs, they're most likely used by high-income parents at better performing schools. And I think that's one of the major criticisms here. How do you respond to that?
Well, I believe that study might have some dubious selection bias, to be honest with you. And so I say that because I think that other studies are going to indicate to you that there are a lot of low-income students who are able to take advantage of these, and they get out and do them. So they get out and move to a different school. This is a good thing, because let's think about the argument that you just made. You're saying, well, you know, low-income students can't get out. Essentially, that's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. I dispute that. But the implication then is that the low-income family is either content with the school they're at, and if they are, I'm happy with that, if they're content with staying where they are, or the implication is something more sinister, which I'm not sure what that is. But Arizona has one of the most proactive and widest used school choice programs in the country. Almost 22% of our students are in non-traditional public schools. And that's a good thing, because it allows them to get out there, focus on getting the education they want. Their parents can get involved, and that's also a good thing.
I think critics will say, though, in tandem with what the Republic reported, but even before all that, the argument was that private school, parochial school, it's just not realistic options for some kids. They can't get there in terms of transportation. The tax breaks they would get would still not remotely cover tuition, and that some of these schools may not want the kid to begin with. Aren't those all factors in here?
Well, I think they're overplayed. We've seen, whether it's the Milwaukee case study, whether it's the Cleveland case study, that when you have students, regardless of their socioeconomic background, but let's take students from a disadvantaged economic background, if they are given an opportunity, they take it. Transportation is not really an overwhelming obstacle to many of them. And if they want to take advantage of it, they can. This provides them, in many instances, with all of the necessary funding. And there are other studies on the other side. I mean, that's the point. I mean, you can cherry pick a study on either side, but what we're seeing is a lot of low-income students are able to change and go to, for instance, a parochial school if they think that's better.
So you're saying they are able to change, even though, I mean, common sense would dictate that some of these schools are pretty expensive, and no matter what kind of tax break you give a low-income family, they're still not going to be able to afford tuition.
Well, but this isn't just a tax break. What this is an educational scholarship. And so what it is it gives a substantial sum of money that actually, in most cases, covers all of the private school tuition.
So you're saying in most cases, this would cover all of the tuition?
Yes.
They would not be lacking?
That's the report I've seen, yeah.
And as far as accountability, does this mean the legislature will start looking at private and parochial schools as far as accountability is concerned?
I think the best accountability is looking at outcomes of students and the choices that their parents make. I think that's the best way to see accountability. And let me give you an example. If you have 3 or 4 schools, as in the district that I live in, and you have some charters and you have some privates, what you'll see is parents are taking their kids to the schools that they think will provide the best outcome for their child. And that is the best accountability you have.
We have heard reports and responses to this saying that this would be the end of public education in Arizona. How do you respond?
That is silly. It is not going to be the end. This program is actually capped, and it is a small fraction. It will impact a very small fraction of students.
The 2020 is capped?
The cap pops off in 2021, but it still it'll have natural caps to it.
But I mean, most Arizona school students will be involved here, right? They will be eligible.
They will, but you're much more optimistic at them switching to ESAs than I am, to be honest with you. I think the reality is many parents are perfectly content with the school their students are going to, whether it's the neighborhood public school, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a parochial school. And I think you're going to see that persist. For
those who say, why vote for Prop 123 when this, in their minds, guts public schools? I mean, it sounds though 123, we need the money for public schools, and then this comes along, and by 2020, no one's going to want public schools.
Well, again, I'd say that's a non sequitur, quite frankly, because what's happening with Prop 123, that money is going to go to traditional and charter public schools. That's where that's going to go. It's going to be a big boost to them, $3.5 billion over 10 years. That's what you need. When we're talking about a student availing themselves of an educational scholarship, when they go, there will be more money that reverts to the traditional public schools. I don't understand the argument. It doesn't make sense to me, because even you, and even the study you were referring to says, yeah, but maybe they only save a few $100s.
Right.
Well, a few $100s adds up if you have more switchers, and that's really what we're talking about.
So bottom line, the idea that this gives the wealthy a private school discount. Okay, I've heard that argument. It gives the wealthy a private school discount. How do you respond?
I say this gives the disadvantaged student an opportunity to leave a failing school and move to a school of their choice where they can have a superior education.
And I've also heard people say that this is just a way for the legislature, you in particular, but the legislature, you're looking to dismantle public schools. That is your bottom line.
No, I think that is an irrational response, quite frankly. I mean, we are looking for outcomes. We are looking for the best possible outcome for students. Get them the best opportunity to maximize their talent and capacity. And that may be, I mean, I have 6 children. Each one of them has very different talents, capacities, interests, and one school may not work as well for one as for another school. That's what school choice is about, is to allow parents to optimize their students' best education.
So you're skeptical of the last question. You're skeptical on this particular issue.
Yes.
You're skeptical of what the Arizona Republic found. You're skeptical of their reporting. You call it cherry picking, I believe. If you find a study that says it is the wealthy that are going to these things, that are using these scholarships, they are leaving from better performing schools, as opposed to the goal, which is low income from poor performing schools. Are you willing to change something about this?
Well, Ted, that's a hypothetical
Yes,
question wrapped in a hypothetical onion wrapper. I haven't seen that study. I mean, the last time we were here, we talked about another hypothetical question. You love those.
Of course I do, because but I mean, the possibility exists that someone's going to come along and say, Senate President Andy Biggs, we saw, man, it's mostly used by wealthy families.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hypothetical, and
so you don't believe that, do you?
I don't believe it. Yeah, I don't believe it.
All right, on we go.
That's the cynic in me. What do you want?
The idea that the superintendent of public instruction has to be told by the legislature what exactly hers or his powers might be. What's going on here? You guys passed this, 24-5 or something like this in the Senate? What did this bill actually do?
I wouldn't characterize it the way you just characterized it. As you know, the superintendent and the state board, they do have some, what I would say, there are some conflicts. But I'm not saying that they're personality driven necessarily. What we did is, over the interim, I asked my staff, please get me the statutes. Let's see if there's overlap. And we found that there was overlap. And quite frankly, you have 50 plus years of history where a legislative body said, well, we like the superintendent, so we're going to give him or her some power. Then somebody else comes in, we like the state board, we're going to give some. And sometimes there's just this confusion. So that's all this bill's trying to do, is to clarify conflicting statutory instructions.
The Superintendent of Public Instruction says that this reverses the will of the voters, also calls it repulsive, but I won't get a response to that. That's subjective. But reverses the will of the voters. Does she have a point?
I don't see how. The Constitution is very clear on this. Article 11, sections 1 through 4, very clear about this. It sets up the Superintendent of Public Instruction, sets up the State Board of Education, and both of them derive their authority to act in any form from the state legislature. And so the state legislature is designed to come up with policy. The State Board of Education is supposed to enact that policy. They give it to the State Board of Education, who then administers that policy. That's all this bill is trying to do. It's not trying to take anybody's power.
But is it right to change that particular balance of power after an election in which a candidate...
There's been no change in the balance of power. That's what I find intriguing about this. As I go through it, I'm not seeing a change in the balance of power. What I'm seeing is maybe there's different parties wanting to assume a little bit of power that otherwise wouldn't be there. And I think this is pretty clear. I don't think anybody's trying to denigrate an election at all.
Okay, all right. Grants law. This was passed by the Senate. Illegal, undocumented illegals, whatever verbiage you want to use, must serve full sentences, no parole. Why is this necessary? Why a good thing for Arizona?
Well, what we found is in theory, they were supposed to be turned over perhaps to ICE. ICE then doesn't hold them under, whether it's a policy or whatever reason, they're not holding them. These individuals that otherwise would be incarcerated and then should be deported are actually out on the street running around. And that's what happened in Grant's case. Over a pack of cigarettes, this young man was killed by someone who would otherwise have been incarcerated, and that action wouldn't have happened. So.
And I know that the critics of this say you're singling out a group here. It's not necessary. It's pure politics. Doesn't necessarily make things safer. Your response?
My response is that to get to prison in Arizona, I know a little bit about the law. You have to work at it. I've talked to Bill Montgomery. He agrees with me. You got to work at it a little bit to get in prison in Arizona. So once you're in prison, these are guys that have had trouble dealing with society. You know what? We've put in place transition programs for people who aren't violent criminals. But if we're letting people out early, without, this makes them safer. It does make the public safer. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but that's why.
The Senate did defeat a couple of immigration bills, though, that I found interesting. The first one was this ban of city-issued IDs to undocumented folks. That was defeated. They're saying it helps folks, and it helps with services, helps with dealing with the police and these sorts of things. What's going on here?
I think that bill was mischaracterized as an illegal immigration bill. When I looked at it, when I first read it, I said, this seems to me an ID theft prevention bill. Arizona is one of the top 3 or 4 states in ID theft every year. In some years we're number 1 even. And what the bill simply did is said, look, if you want to issue an ID, go ahead, whether it's for a library, pool card, whatever it may be, but it can't look like the Arizona driver's license or official ID, because then it will be easily mistaken as an official ID. Because what's happening sometimes is a municipality will say, we'll bring in a utility bill and we'll issue you an ID. And it's to prevent this idea of ID theft.
Another defeat came regarding a shared revenue ban to cities that are described as sanctuary cities, quote unquote. And a couple of senators, Adam Driggs, there might be immigration fatigue involved here. Bob Worsley, that's symbolically chasing people around if they can't show papers, doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. That one was defeated too. Are you surprised that both of these bills lost? Failed.
Ted, I've been in the legislature 14 years. This type of thing doesn't surprise me. I would say I wasn't surprised, but what I would say is, I again think this bill was a good bill. It was a necessary bill, because for me, I look at it as are the states, or are the municipalities, the subdivisions of the states complying with state law? And if they are, I don't have a problem with them doing what they want to. what they want to do. But there's a reason that we passed state law, and that's what for me the issue was here. And you know, I won't speak for these senators. They voted, I'm sure, on their conscience and principle.
Got about 30 seconds left. Very
Okay.
quickly. Critics are saying that these kinds of bills, they jeopardize the economy, they send the wrong message to Mexico. You agree?
I don't. I think that's just silliness again. I mean, that's overstating it. I was told, hey, if you put these bills on the board, we're going to have SB 1070 protests. And I said, well, who's going to gin it up? It's you guys. These bills are actually fairly simple. I think they're straightforward, they're defensible, and nobody's trying to gin that up.
We got to stop you right there. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ted. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.